When it comes to burning visceral fat, most people think the solution is buried somewhere inside another complicated diet rule, another strict calorie chart, or another exhausting workout routine. But the real trigger for melting the most dangerous fat in your body starts with something far simpler, far more natural, and far more aligned with how your metabolism is actually designed to work. Visceral fat doesn't respond to force. It responds to strategy. It reacts not to how hard you push your body, but to how intelligently you reset the hormonal environment that controls fat storage at its core. And when you understand the one shift that flips this internal switch, the body stops clinging to that deep, stubborn fat and finally begins releasing it with surprising speed. This is where real transformation begins, not with deprivation, but with reclaiming control over the very signals that dictate whether your body stores fat or burns it as fuel. Visceral fat responds to hormonal balance, not calorie counting. And this single idea changes the entire way you approach weight loss, because it invites you to look beneath the surface of typical diet culture and understand how your body actually governs fat storage. For decades, people have been told that the only way to lose fat is to eat less and move more. But this narrow formula ignores the hormonal systems that decide whether calories are burned or locked away. Visceral fat, the deep fat wrapped around your organs, behaves differently from the softer subcutaneous fat under your skin. It doesn't respond well to restriction or willpower. It responds to the hormonal environment you create through your eating patterns, stress levels, sleep rhythms, and daily habits. And when those hormones are out of balance, your body becomes biologically wired to store fat, no matter how disciplined you try to be with food portions. The central hormone in this process is insulin, a powerful storage hormone that acts like a switch. When insulin is high, fat stays locked away. When insulin drops, fat becomes available as energy. Calorie-focused approaches rarely consider this, which is why someone can eat the same number of calories from sugar and another person can eat that many calories from healthy fats. Yet their bodies respond completely differently. It's not the calorie number that determines whether visceral fat is burned or stored. It's the hormonal reaction triggered by those calories. Refined carbohydrates and sugars create rapid spikes in insulin, sending a strong signal that energy must be stored, particularly in the deeply stubborn visceral regions. Over time, this constant elevation of insulin leads to insulin resistance, making the body require even higher insulin levels to manage the same foods, trapping more fat in the abdomen. Hormonal balance involves more than just insulin. Cortisol, the stress hormone, plays a major role. When cortisol is elevated for long periods, especially due to chronic stress or poor sleep, it encourages fat storage around the midsection because the body interprets stress as a threat and prepares by storing fuel. Even if you follow a strict calorie control diet, high cortisol can counteract your efforts, pushing fat storage deeper into the abdominal cavity. This is why people often say they gain weight during stressful periods, even when they're not eating more. The hormonal imbalance overrides a calorie deficit and directs the body toward fat conservation. Visceral fat is metabolically active and responds quickly to changes in cortisol, which is why managing stress becomes a central pillar for reducing this hidden fat. Leptin and ghrelin, hormones that control hunger and satiety, also influence visceral fat accumulation. When you're hormonally unbalanced, leptin signals become blunted, meaning the brain doesn't recognize when the body has enough stored energy. This leads to increased cravings, overeating, and difficulty controlling appetite, even when the logical mind knows what to do. Ghrelin rises when the body feels deprived, which is common in traditional calorie-restricted diets, and this fuels hunger, making weight loss feel like a battle. Balancing these hormones makes it easier to eat intuitively, without fighting against constant biological urges. When hunger hormones are stable, you naturally eat less without forcing yourself to restrict. Another layer of hormonal influence involves how often you eat. Frequent eating and snacking keep insulin elevated, even if the snacks are small or low in calories. This prevents the body from accessing stored visceral fat, creating periods where insulin can drop through structured fasting windows or spacing meals apart allows the body to tap into deep fat stores for energy. This hormonal approach has nothing to do with counting calories, and everything to do with timing and physiological rhythm. When insulin drops for long enough, the body switches from storage mode to burning mode, unlocking visceral fat that has been trapped for years. Sleep also plays a critical hormonal role in visceral fat regulation. Poor sleep raises cortisol and disrupts insulin sensitivity, making the body more resistant to fat loss, regardless of how healthy the diet may be. Hormones that regulate appetite become imbalanced, leading to intense cravings for high-sugar and high-carb foods the next day. Even one night of poor sleep can cause a temporary hormonal environment that favors fat storage. This is why people who improve their sleep quality often notice visceral fat reduction, even without dramatic diet changes. True hormonal balance also requires nourishing the body with whole foods that support metabolism. Healthy fats, quality proteins, and natural fiber-rich foods keep insulin steady and support long-term metabolic repair. Unlike processed foods, which create hormonal chaos, nutrient-dense whole foods help stabilize energy levels, reduce inflammation, and support the hormonal signals that encourage fat burning rather than fat storing. Restoring hormonal balance transforms the body from a state of holding on to visceral fat to a state of releasing it, making fat loss feel natural instead of forced. Insulin resistance is the primary driver behind deep abdominal fat, and understanding this gives you a clearer picture of why so many people struggle to lose weight even when they feel like they're doing everything right. Insulin is not just another hormone. It is the body's main storage hormone, the one that decides whether energy is burned or stored. When your cells stop responding properly to insulin, your body is forced to produce more and more of it in an attempt to push glucose into the cells. These chronically elevated insulin levels don't just regulate blood sugar. They dictate the way fat accumulates, especially the visceral fat that forms deep inside the abdominal cavity around vital organs. This type of fat is dangerous, metabolically active, and stubborn, and insulin resistance acts like a constant signal telling the body to store more of it. The process often begins quietly, long before any symptoms appear. Years of consuming refined carbohydrates, sugary foods, and frequent snacks condition the body to constantly release insulin. Each spike sends a message: store energy. When this happens repeatedly, the cells become overwhelmed and start ignoring insulin's signal. The pancreas then responds by increasing insulin production even more. Soon, the bloodstream is flooded with high insulin levels all day long. And because insulin is a fat storage hormone, the body becomes stuck in storage mode. This environment particularly favors the accumulation of visceral fat because it has a higher concentration of insulin receptors and responds more aggressively to insulin signals. Even if a person cuts calories, if insulin levels remain high, the body resists burning stored fat and clings tightly to visceral fat reserves. Insulin resistance also slows the metabolism. When cells cannot efficiently absorb glucose, the body feels falsely deprived as if it doesn't have enough energy, even though energy is stored in abundance as fat. This triggers cravings, particularly for high-carb and sugary foods, because the body keeps searching for quick fuel that it can't properly utilize. This cycle not only leads to overeating, but reinforces the very patterns that deepen insulin resistance in the first place. The more the resistance grows, the harder the body fights to hold on to visceral fat. This is why people often say they gain weight easily and lose it very slowly despite dieting or exercising. Their hormonal environment is working against them, and insulin resistance is at the center of that struggle. Another reason insulin resistance drives visceral fat so powerfully is its connection with inflammation. Visceral fat releases inflammatory molecules that further impair insulin signaling, creating a damaging feedback loop. The more visceral fat you accumulate, the more inflamed the body becomes, and the more the cells resist insulin. This systemic inflammation makes weight loss harder, increases fatigue, and disrupts the body's natural balance. Over time, insulin resistance and visceral fat feed into each other, creating a metabolic trap that many people don't realize they are caught in. Traditional weight loss advice rarely addresses this deeper issue because it focuses on calories rather than hormones. Lifestyle habits also play a significant role in insulin resistance. Lack of sleep elevates cortisol, which interferes with insulin sensitivity and pushes the body toward greater fat storage. Chronic stress keeps cortisol levels high throughout the day, signaling the body to store fat around the abdomen as a protective mechanism. Sedentary living further weakens the cell's ability to respond to insulin, making it harder for glucose to be used for energy. These factors combine to create a hormonal landscape in which visceral fat thrives. The problem is not a lack of discipline, but a biological environment that has been shifted into imbalance over time. When the body becomes insulin resistant, even healthy foods can trigger exaggerated insulin responses. Someone may choose whole grains, fruits, or lean proteins and still experience difficulty losing visceral fat because the underlying hormone resistance has not been addressed. This is why two people can follow the same diet and only one of them sees results. The difference is in effort. It's insulin sensitivity. Improving insulin sensitivity is essential for unlocking stored visceral fat, and this begins with giving the body a break from constant spikes. Allowing periods of low insulin enables the body to switch gears from storing energy to burning it. Movement also improves insulin sensitivity, not necessarily intense workouts, but consistent moderate bodily activity that encourages muscles to use glucose more efficiently. Building lean muscle further improves insulin response because muscle tissue acts as a reservoir for glucose, reducing the amount that circulates in the bloodstream. This reduces the pressure on the pancreas to continually produce insulin, helping break the cycle of resistance. Insulin resistance affects energy, mood, appetite, and the body's ability to burn fat. It is the hidden mechanism behind stubborn weight gain, especially around the belly, and it explains why so many people feel stuck despite trying multiple diets. When insulin resistance is present, the body is working against its own fat-burning potential because the hormones driving metabolism are out of balance. Understanding this reveals that the real solution lies not in starving the body or pushing harder, but in restoring insulin sensitivity to a level where the body can finally access its stored visceral fat as fuel. Short, strategic fasting windows rapidly lower insulin levels, and this single shift can transform the way the body accesses stored energy, especially the deeply embedded visceral fat that refuses to budge with ordinary dieting. When you stop eating for specific periods, you allow insulin to fall naturally, giving your metabolism the opportunity to switch from storing mode to burning mode. Most people spend their entire day eating from morning until night, keeping insulin elevated and preventing their body from ever tapping into the reserves they want to lose. Fasting doesn't work because you're eating less. It works because it creates the internal hormonal conditions your body needs in order to unlock stubborn fat. During a fasting window, the drop in insulin is like flipping a metabolic switch. The body recognizes that no new energy is coming in, so it turns to stored energy for fuel. Visceral fat, being one of the most metabolically active types of fat, responds quickly once insulin is low enough. Unlike subcutaneous fat, which can be slow and resistant, visceral fat is highly sensitive to insulin changes and becomes accessible when the hormonal environment shifts. This is why many people notice their waist shrinking or belly flattening, even when the scale moves slowly. The body targets the most harmful fat first, and fasting provides a path for that process to begin. Another key reason fasting is effective is that it gives the digestive system a break from constant work. Every meal you eat triggers insulin release, but frequent eating, especially snacking, keeps insulin elevated all day long. Even small snacks can spike insulin and interrupt fat burning. When you adopt structured fasting windows, you remove those constant spikes, creating long periods where insulin naturally drifts downward. These stretches of metabolic quiet allow the body to repair insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, and reestablish hormonal balance. Over time, your body becomes more efficient at switching between burning glucose and burning fat, a flexibility that is often lost in people who eat around the clock. Fasting also helps stabilize hunger hormones. Ghrelin, the hormone that signals hunger, begins adapting to new eating times when you fast consistently. Instead of firing constantly throughout the day, it starts to rise only during your eating window, making it easier to go longer without feeling desperate to eat. This reduces the emotional and psychological struggle many people associate with dieting. At the same time, leptin, the hormone that signals fullness, begins functioning more effectively. The body starts recognizing satiety more clearly, helping prevent overeating during meals. These hunger hormone improvements support long-term weight management by aligning biological signals with your fasting routine. One of the most powerful effects of fasting is its impact on insulin sensitivity. When insulin remains low for extended periods, cells become more receptive to it, reducing the need for the pancreas to produce excess insulin. Better insulin sensitivity means less fat storage, more stable blood sugar, and easier access to stored fat for energy. This improvement often leads to smoother energy levels, fewer cravings, and a natural reduction in appetite. People frequently report that after practicing fasting for a while, they no longer feel controlled by food or trapped in constant cycles of hunger and cravings. Fasting also triggers cellular repair mechanisms that benefit metabolic health. Autophagy, the body's internal cleanup system, becomes more active during fasting windows. Damaged cells and toxins are broken down and removed, reducing inflammation and improving the body's ability to function efficiently. Since visceral fat contributes to inflammation, reducing overall inflammation supports the body in mobilizing that fat more effectively. This cellular repair process helps reverse some of the damage caused by years of poor dietary habits, high insulin levels, and metabolic dysfunction. Another aspect of fasting that supports visceral fat reduction is its impact on growth hormone. During fasting, growth hormone levels naturally rise, promoting fat burning and preserving lean muscle mass. This helps the body maintain metabolic strength even as it burns fat. Muscle is an important metabolic organ because it increases the number of calories you burn at rest. By preserving muscle and targeting fat, fasting helps reshape the body, making weight loss healthier and more sustainable. Fasting simplifies eating patterns, removing the constant decision-making around meals and snacks. Many people find that with fewer meals, they make healthier choices because their eating becomes more intentional rather than reactive. Reducing the frequency of eating also reduces opportunities for blood sugar spikes and emotional eating. This simplicity helps reinforce consistency, which is crucial for long-term success. Short fasting windows are flexible, making them sustainable for most lifestyles. You can choose an eating window that fits your routine, whether it's 16 hours of fasting and an 8-hour eating window, or shorter fasts that still allow insulin to fall. The key is consistency. Even modest fasting windows can make a significant difference when practiced daily. Over time, these strategic periods of rest repair the metabolic system, allowing the body to burn visceral fat more effectively. As the body adapts to fasting, many people notice improved mental clarity, better energy levels, and more stable moods. These benefits occur because the body becomes efficient at using stored fat for fuel, creating a steady energy supply instead of relying on constant carbohydrate intake. This metabolic strength supports both physical and mental well-being. Short, strategic fasting windows place the body in the ideal hormonal state for burning visceral fat. And by practicing them consistently, you give your metabolism the opportunity to restore balance and access the deep fat that traditional dieting often fails to touch. Reducing sugar and refined carbs stops the constant fat storage signal. And this single change can dramatically alter how your body handles energy because these foods trigger the fastest and highest spikes in insulin. Every time you consume something high in sugar or made from refined grains, your bloodstream is flooded with glucose. In response, your pancreas releases insulin to move that glucose into the cells. The problem begins when the cycle plays out repeatedly throughout the day. Frequent spikes in insulin keep your body locked in storage mode, preventing it from ever dipping into stored fat, especially the deep visceral fat packed tightly around your internal organs. When sugar and refined carbs dominate your meals, you're essentially flipping the fat storage switch on again and again without giving your metabolic system a break. Refined carbs digest rapidly, almost like eating sugar directly. Bread, pasta, pastries, white rice, and processed snacks break down so quickly that insulin surges in response. It doesn't matter if the portion seems small, the hormonal impact is large. With insulin elevated, your body cannot access stored fat for energy, meaning fat loss slows dramatically, regardless of calorie intake. Over time, this pattern contributes to insulin resistance, a state where your cells become less responsive to insulin signal. As a result, the body produces even more insulin to compensate, and the constant flood of insulin amplifies fat storage, especially around the belly. Reducing these foods lowers insulin naturally, allowing the body to shift its hormonal balance back toward fat burning. Cutting out sugar and refined carbs also stabilizes blood sugar levels, which has a powerful effect on cravings. When you eat sugary foods, blood sugar rises quickly but crashes soon after, creating sudden hunger and urging you to eat again. This roller coaster makes you feel constantly unsatisfied, mentally distracted by food, and prone to overeating. Many people believe they lack willpower when in reality their hormonal environment is pushing them toward constant snacking. Once you remove the foods causing these rapid spikes, your blood sugar levels even out. Hunger becomes manageable and cravings decline naturally. This stability makes it much easier to stick to healthier eating patterns and supports long-term visceral fat loss. Reducing sugar also reduces inflammation, another key factor in visceral fat accumulation. High sugar diets elevate inflammatory markers in the body, and visceral fat itself secretes inflammatory substances that disrupt metabolic processes. When inflammation rises, insulin sensitivity drops, causing the body to produce more insulin, which in turn stores more fat. This vicious cycle keeps people stuck in a pattern of weight gain and fatigue. When you remove the foods that aggravate inflammation, your body begins to repair itself. Hormones stabilize, insulin sensitivity improves, and fat becomes more accessible as an energy source. This internal repair makes fat loss feel smoother, steadier, and more predictable. Another benefit of lowering sugar and refined carbs is improved energy levels. Many people assume they need quick carbs or energy, but these foods produce unstable short-term bursts followed by crashes. When you reduce them, the body becomes more efficient at using stored fat for fuel. This metabolic transition provides a steady stream of energy rather than sudden spikes. You feel more alert, focused, and energized throughout the day, which helps support movement, better decision-making, and a healthier routine overall. This sustained energy is one of the reasons people notice a sharper mind and improved mood when they lower sugar intake. Reducing sugar also helps regulate hormones beyond insulin. High sugar intake disrupts ghrelin and leptin, the hormones responsible for hunger and satiety. When leptin function is impaired, the brain doesn't receive the correct signal to stop eating, leading to overeating and constant cravings. Ghrelin rises unpredictably, making hunger feel more intense and harder to manage. By lowering sugar, the body begins restoring balance between these hormones, allowing hunger cues to become more reliable and reducing the feeling of being controlled by food. Balanced hunger hormones make it easier to maintain a healthy eating pattern without feeling deprived. Sugar and refined carbs also affect liver health, and the liver plays a major role in fat metabolism. Excess sugar, especially fructose, is processed in the liver, where it is converted into fat and consumed in large amounts. This fat accumulates inside the liver and contributes to fatty liver disease, which is closely linked to visceral fat gain. When the liver becomes overloaded, it struggles to regulate insulin and metabolize fat effectively. Reducing sugar allows the liver to recover, improves its function, and enhances the body's ability to burn fat rather than store it. Lowering sugar intake helps reduce water retention and bloating as well. High sugar diets increase sodium retention and cause fluctuations in electrolyte balance, leading to swelling and abdominal discomfort. Removing these foods helps restore fluid balance, making the stomach appear flatter and the body feel lighter. This immediate physical improvement motivates many people to continue making healthier choices, creating a positive loop of progress. One of the most empowering effects of reducing sugar and refined carbs is how it changes your relationship with food. Instead of being driven by cravings and energy crashes, you develop a calmer, more grounded approach to eating. Meals become more satisfying when composed of whole foods, healthy fats, and proteins that maintain stable blood sugar. Over time, your body begins to prefer these foods naturally because they provide steady fuel and support hormonal harmony. This shift supports long-term success by making healthy eating feel natural rather than forced. Eating whole, unprocessed foods stabilizes metabolic pathways, and this simple yet powerful shift can reshape the internal landscape of your body in a way that supports fat burning rather than fat storing. Whole foods come with their natural fiber, nutrients, and structure intact, which mean they digest more slowly, trigger smaller insulin responses, and provide steady, stable energy rather than spikes and crashes. When you eat foods in their closest to natural form, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, lean proteins, and minimally processed fats, you're giving your body the raw materials it needs to function efficiently, heal metabolic damage, and regulate hormones that control appetite, energy, and fat storage. Unlike processed foods, which overwhelm the system with rapid glucose release and chemical additives, whole foods work with your biology, not against it, allowing insulin levels to remain balanced and creating the perfect internal environment for reducing visceral fat. One of the biggest advantages of whole foods is how they affect satiety. Processed foods are engineered to be hyperpalatable, meaning they stimulate intense cravings and override your natural fullness cues. They're often stripped of fiber and loaded with sugar, salt, and artificial flavors that keep you wanting more. Whole food, by contrast, contain natural components that tell your brain you've had enough. Fiber slows digestion, expands in the stomach, and helps regulate glucose absorption, preventing the sharp insulin spikes that trap fat in the abdominal area. When digestion is slower and steadier, you stay satisfied longer, snack less, and maintain balanced blood sugar throughout the day. This level of satiety helps stabilize hunger hormones like ghrelin and leptin, allowing your appetite to align with your body's true energy needs. Whole foods also play a major role in reducing inflammation. Visceral fat thrives in an inflammatory environment, and processed foods, especially those high in omega-6 oils, refined sugars, and chemical preservatives, fuel inflammation in the body. Chronic inflammation interferes with insulin signaling and encourages fat to accumulate around the organs. Whole foods, especially vegetables, fruits, herbs, and omega-3 rich sources like flaxseed, walnuts, and fatty fish, contain antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds that help calm this internal fire. As inflammation decreases, insulin sensitivity improves, making it easier for your body to burn stored fat. Another key benefit of whole foods is their nutrient density. Processed foods may be high in calories but low in nutrients, leading to a form of hidden malnutrition, where the body receives energy but not the vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients required for optimal metabolic function. This nutrient deficiency triggers cravings and overeating as the body keeps searching for what it lacks. Whole foods provide these essential nutrients naturally, supporting hormonal balance, energy production, digestion, and cellular repair. When the body gets what it needs from real food, the constant drive to snack diminishes, and internal systems begin to operate more efficiently. Whole foods also help improve gut health, which plays a crucial role in metabolic balance and fat storage. The gut microbiome thrives on fiber-rich, minimally processed foods. A healthy gut supports better digestion, improved immune function, and more stable blood sugar. Processed foods, artificial sweeteners, and chemical additives disrupt the microbiome, encouraging harmful bacteria to flourish. This imbalance can increase cravings, worsen inflammation, and contribute to weight gain. By focusing on whole foods, you nourish beneficial bacteria, improve nutrient absorption, and create conditions that support effective fat burning. A healthier gut also produces short-chain fatty acids that help regulate appetite and reduce fat accumulation, especially visceral fat. Whole foods promote stable energy levels throughout the day, helping you avoid the cycle of fatigue and overeating that comes with processed high-sugar meals. When energy comes from whole sources, the body processes it gradually, providing a steady supply of fuel instead of the rapid spikes followed by crashes. This stable energy supports better focus, improved mood, and more consistent physical activity. When your energy is steady, you're more likely to move throughout the day, which further supports fat loss and metabolic health. Movement doesn't need to be intense. Even light activity becomes easier when your body isn't weighed down by processed foods and unstable blood sugar. Another important effect of whole foods is their support for hormonal harmony. Hormones regulate hunger, energy, sleep, and fat storage. Processed foods disrupt this balance by causing erratic blood sugar levels, chronic inflammation, stress on the liver, and irregular insulin responses. Whole foods help restore equilibrium by providing the nutrients needed for efficient hormone production and signaling. Balanced hormones make weight loss smoother, more predictable, and less stressful. You're no longer fighting your body. Instead, you're working with it. Switching to whole foods also encourages mindful eating. Processed foods are often consumed quickly and mindlessly, whereas whole foods require preparation, chewing, and attention. This mindful approach naturally reduces overeating because it strengthens the connection between your body and your awareness of hunger and fullness. Eating becomes an intentional act rather than a reaction to cravings or stress. Over time, The consistent consumption of whole, unprocessed foods helps retrain your metabolism. Your body becomes more efficient at burning fat, regulating blood sugar, and stabilizing energy. As insulin levels remain steady, the internal pressure that promotes visceral fat storage weakens, allowing the body to gradually break it down and use it for fuel. This metabolic restoration is powerful because it doesn't rely on extreme dieting or restriction. It simply aligns your daily choices with the way your body was meant to function. Adding healthy fats resets hunger hormones. And this shift alone can transform how your body processes energy because fats influence satiety, insulin response, and metabolic stability in ways that carbohydrates simply cannot. For years, dietary advice demonized fats and encouraged low-fat eating. But this created generations of people constantly hungry, hormonally imbalanced, and metabolically strained. Healthy fats found in foods like avocados, olive oil, nuts, seeds, eggs, fatty fish, and coconut provide a slow, steady release of energy that keeps blood sugar stable and insulin low. When insulin stays low, the body becomes far more capable of accessing stored fat, especially visceral fat stored deep within the abdominal cavity. Instead of being trapped in storage mode, your metabolism shifts to fat-burning mode more easily because healthy fats create conditions that naturally lower insulin, reduce cravings, and restore hormonal balance. Healthy fats have a profound effect on satiety because they activate hormones that signal fullness to the brain. When you eat fats, your body releases cholecystokinin, CCK, a hormone that slows digestion and tells your system you receive sufficient energy. This prevents overeating and stops the constant cycle of snacking that keeps insulin high. Unlike refined carbohydrates that burn quickly and leave you hungry soon after, fats digest slowly and keep you satisfied for hours. This extended satiety is essential for reducing visceral fat because longer periods between meals allow insulin to drop and create metabolic space for fat burning. People often notice that once they add healthy fats to their meals, their desire for sugary foods dramatically decreases because their hunger hormones finally begin functioning properly. Another key benefit of healthy fats is their stabilizing effect on blood sugar. When meals contain adequate fat, the absorption of carbohydrates slows down, preventing sharp glucose spikes that lead to sharp insulin spikes. Stable blood sugar not only feels better, fewer energy crashes, fewer mood swings, but also protects the body from storing fat unnecessarily. Healthy fats blunt these spikes, helping maintain a balanced hormonal environment where visceral fat is not constantly being added to. Healthy fats also regulate ghrelin and leptin, the two hormones that govern hunger and satiety. When dietary fats are too low, leptin signaling becomes impaired, meaning the brain fails to register that the body has enough stored energy. This creates persistent hunger, even when calorie intake is adequate. Ghrelin, the hormone that triggers hunger, also becomes erratic when meals lack fats, causing frequent and intense hunger signals that make it difficult to maintain healthy eating habits. By incorporating healthy fats, these hunger hormones calm down and operate in predictable, balanced manner. This hormonal harmony makes it easier to reduce meal frequency, avoid unnecessary snacking, and maintain the fasting windows that support visceral fat reduction. Healthy fats are also essential for hormone production overall. Many hormones, including those that regulate metabolism, stress, growth, and reproduction, are built from cholesterol and fatty acids. When the diet is too low in fat, hormone production suffers, and the entire metabolic system struggles. By adding healthy fats, you support the endocrine system's ability to produce hormones efficiently, which directly affects how the body stores and burns fat. Another important function of healthy fats is their ability to reduce inflammation. Chronic inflammation is a major contributor to visceral fat accumulation because it interferes with insulin signaling and promotes fat storage around the organs. Omega-3 fatty acids found in foods like fatty fish, walnuts, chia seeds, and flaxseed have strong anti-inflammatory properties that help reverse this internal inflammatory cycle. When inflammation decreases, insulin sensitivity improves, cravings diminish, and metabolism becomes more flexible. Healthy fats also support brain health, which influences eating behavior, mood, and stress responses. The brain is nearly 60% fat, and it relies on omega-3s and other healthy fats to function efficiently. When the brain is nourished, cognitive function improves, emotional regulation stabilizes, and stress-related eating decreases. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, a hormone that encourages the storage of visceral fat. By supporting brain health and reducing inflammation, healthy fats indirectly help regulate cortisol levels. Lower cortisol means reduced abdominal fat accumulation and a more balanced metabolic state. One of the most transformative changes people notice when adding healthy fats is the disappearance of constant cravings. Sugar cravings, carb cravings, emotional hunger, and energy crashes become far less frequent because the body now has access to stable, long-lasting energy. This stability strengthens willpower not by forcing discipline, but by removing the biological triggers that create overeating in the first place. When your body feels nourished, calm, and satisfied, healthy habits become easier to maintain. The inclusion of healthy fats also supports improved digestion, especially when paired with fiber-rich whole foods. Fats help the body absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, which are crucial for metabolic health, immune function, and hormonal regulation. Over time, consistently adding healthy fats helps retrain the metabolism to rely more on fat for fuel rather than sugar. This metabolic flexibility, once restored, is one of the most powerful tools for reducing visceral fat. The body becomes efficient at switching between energy sources, stabilizing hunger and maintaining low insulin levels, which together create the perfect environment for burning deep, stubborn abdominal fat. When you think about burning visceral fat, most people immediately jump toward complicated diet plans or extreme routines. Yet, one of the most overlooked elements is the role of daily habits that quietly shape your metabolism throughout the day. This approach focuses on understanding how a single shift in your routine can trigger a powerful metabolic response that gradually forces your body to tap into the deep stored fat around your organs. Visceral fat is not just an aesthetic problem. This type of fat behaves like an active organ, sending inflammatory chemicals throughout your system and creating a hormonal imbalance that makes fat loss feel impossible. This is why the approach isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right thing consistently, so your hormonal environment begins working with you instead of against you. That starts with a practice many people underestimate: creating a clear eating window that gives your body long enough time to switch from storing mode to burning mode. Even a slight extension of time between meals creates a metabolic shift that breaks the cycle of elevated insulin, which is a primary hormone keeping visceral fat locked in place. This isn't about starving yourself. It's about allowing the natural rhythm of your metabolism to function the way it was designed to, long before constant snacking became normal. When your body constantly receives food, especially food high in sugar or refined carbohydrates, insulin stays elevated. And elevated insulin tells your system to store fat, not release it. But when you reduce this frequency, your body enters a state where insulin begins to drop. And the lower it goes, the easier it becomes for your body to unlock visceral fat and use it for energy. Many people think they need to overhaul their entire lifestyle. But one change applied consistently is far more effective than many changes abandoned after a few days. By simply delaying your first meal or avoiding late-night eating, you give your metabolism the space it needs to access deeper fat reserves that would otherwise remain untouched. This shift doesn't require supplements, extreme dieting, or complicated instructions. It relies on the body's natural design to prioritize stored fat when insulin is low. Another powerful aspect of this habit is how it trains your hunger hormones to reset. For people who struggle with cravings or constant hunger, that issue is often hormonal, not a lack of discipline. When you begin establishing a consistent eating window, hormones like ghrelin start aligning themselves with your new schedule. Over time, your hunger becomes predictable instead of random, and cravings start to weaken. This improvement has a direct impact on visceral fat, because the calmer your hunger signals become, the easier it is to avoid overeating or unnecessary snacking. Another benefit of this approach is that it enhances your body's ability to activate repair processes when you give your digestive system a break. Even if only a few hours longer than usual, you increase your body's capacity to remove damaged cells and improve insulin sensitivity. This internal cleanup is crucial for people struggling with stubborn belly fat, because inflammation and insulin resistance work together to protect visceral fat, making it extremely difficult to burn. By improving insulin sensitivity, your body becomes far more efficient at handling carbohydrates, storing less and burning more. You also develop metabolic flexibility, the ability of your body to switch between burning sugar and burning fat without resistance. When metabolic flexibility is low, the body struggles to tap into stored fat and instead demands frequent refueling. But when you incorporate longer gaps between meals, your body relearns how to use fat as fuel, increasing energy levels, reducing midday crashes, and slowly melting away visceral fat. It may feel unusual at first because your system is adapting, but as this flexibility builds, you start experiencing steady energy, clearer thinking, and less dependence on frequent meals. Finally, this daily habit acts as a foundation for all other healthy choices you might make. Whether you adjust your diet, increase your movement, or improve your sleep, every new action works better because your hormonal environment has shifted from fat storing to fat burning mode. This is why even people who have tried countless strategies often feel dramatic change when they adopt this simple shift. It aligns your body's natural rhythms with your goals, creates a strong internal environment for fat loss, and targets the dangerous visceral fat that affects your energy, mood, and long-term health. One of the most underestimated tools for burning visceral fat is understanding how your body responds to stress and how managing that stress changes your hormonal environment in a way that directly impacts fat storage. Visceral fat is closely tied to cortisol, a hormone that rises when you experience ongoing stress, irregular sleep, emotional pressure, or constant mental strain. Many people focus entirely on diet and exercise while ignoring this internal factor that quietly signals the body to store fat, especially around the organs. When cortisol stays high for long periods, the body shifts into survival mode where it prioritizes storing energy rather than releasing it. Managing this hormonal environment begins with recognizing how frequently modern life triggers stress responses. From the moment you wake up, your system is bombarded with stimulation, notifications, rushing through routines, caffeine spikes, skipped meals, traffic, work pressure, emotional tension, and lack of downtime. Your body interprets each of these as small stress signals, and over time they accumulate into a persistent cortisol load. When cortisol is elevated, it interferes with insulin, making the body less responsive to it. This leads to higher blood sugar, increased hunger, stronger cravings, and greater fat storage, particularly in the abdominal area. Breaking this cycle doesn't require eliminating stress entirely, but rather creating deliberate practices that pull the body out of survival mode and into a state where it feels safe enough to release stored energy. One of the most effective ways is building a calm, steady morning routine that sets the tone for the rest of the day. Even small actions such as waking up without immediately checking your phone, drinking water before caffeine, and giving yourself a few minutes of slow breathing or quiet reflection can lower cortisol levels. When your body begins a day in a more balanced state, it is less likely to overreact to stressors later on, and insulin remains more stable throughout the morning. Morning habits create a powerful anchor for hormonal regulation, and even people who don't change their diet immediately notice improvements when the hormonal environment is calmer. Another crucial factor is sleep, which plays a massive role in cortisol regulation. Poor sleep or inconsistent sleep patterns raise cortisol levels dramatically and suppress fat burning while increasing hunger hormones. Improving sleep quality by setting a consistent bedtime, avoiding screens near bedtime, and creating a darker, cooler sleeping environment can lower cortisol significantly. As cortisol drops, the body becomes more responsive to insulin, making it much easier to burn visceral fat through normal daily activity. Gentle movement, such as walking, stretching, or slow resistance training, can lower cortisol while still supporting fat burning. These types of movements signal to the body that it is safe and stable, encouraging the release of stored fat. Mindful eating also becomes important in regulating cortisol. Eating in a rushed or anxious state keeps the nervous system activated and interferes with digestion and nutrient absorption. Slowing down meals, taking deeper breaths before eating, chewing more thoroughly, and avoiding multitasking during meals can dramatically improve digestion and lower cortisol responses. Finally, creating intentional moments of stillness throughout the day, even a few minutes of slow breathing or stepping outside, can reset the nervous system and prevent cortisol from rising continually. Lower cortisol improves every other fat-burning mechanism in your body, and makes dietary changes or exercise far more effective because the hormonal obstacles are removed. Movement throughout the day improves fat-burning efficiency more than long, intense workouts. Visceral fat is particularly responsive to consistent, moderate activity because it thrives in a sedentary environment. By introducing movement regularly throughout the day, even in small increments, you create a hormonal and metabolic environment that favors fat release. One of the reasons movement is so effective is its impact on insulin sensitivity. Muscles pull sugar from the bloodstream even without high-intensity exertion, reducing the demand for insulin and lowering circulating levels, which is essential for unlocking visceral fat. Daily movement also enhances circulation, helping release fatty acids from visceral fat into bloodstream where they can be used as energy. Frequent movement increases non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT, which is a major component of total daily energy expenditure and burns calories without triggering excessive cortisol. Movement also helps regulate appetite and hunger hormones and reduces stress, improving mood and lowering cortisol. It preserves lean muscle mass, ensuring the metabolic engine stays strong. Incorporating movement into daily routines makes sustainable fat loss achievable because it works with the body's natural rhythms, gradually improving insulin sensitivity, increasing circulation, stabilizing hormones, supporting muscle mass, and promoting energy use. Over time, these small, frequent actions combine to create a substantial impact on visceral fat reduction. Hydration and electrolytes support metabolic flexibility during fasting. Water and minerals influence fat-burning pathways more than most people realize. When you fast, your body shifts the stored energy in fat, particularly visceral fat, and proper hydration keeps those processes running smoothly. Even mild dehydration can impair insulin sensitivity and slow fat burning. Electrolytes sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium regulate fluid balance and energy production. Maintaining them prevents fatigue and supports fat burning during fasting. Hydration aids detoxification as visceral fat is broken down, flushing toxins and preventing metabolic slowdown. It also helps distinguish true hunger from thirst, supports cardiovascular function, and preserves muscle during fasting. Proper hydration and electrolyte balance make fasting easier, more effective, and sustainable. Sleep quality directly impacts visceral fat because it regulates the hormones that control appetite, metabolism, and fat storage. Poor sleep raises cortisol, drops insulin sensitivity, and drives cravings for quick energy. Restorative sleep increases growth hormone, improves insulin sensitivity, regulates hunger hormones, and supports metabolic efficiency. Consistent, high-quality sleep is a metabolic necessity for burning visceral fat. Consistency in all aspects of lifestyle is the ultimate driver of visceral fat reduction. Sporadic efforts rarely produce lasting results because the body needs repeated, predictable signals to shift metabolism. When your actions are consistent, nutrition, movement, sleep, stress management, hydration, your body interprets them as safe and finally allows hormonal shifts that favor fat burning. Consistency is a glue that connects every strategy into a coherent system that encourages the body to burn visceral fat efficiently and sustainably.